So many guys come to me that are just like 20% body fat or higher, and they just want to start steroids because they think it's just going to magically make them leaner.
Chase Irons is a transparent informative trainer that's done work in the bodybuilding space for years.
One of Phil Viz's seminars, he was talking about like 15, 20, 25 IUs of pharmaceutical growth hormone doses, and I was willing to try 3 months of it, of doing 18 IUs a day, because I just wanted to be like, what does growth hormone alone do? And it was freaking Derek, More Plates, More Days, reached out to me and it was like, we have a testosterone test that isn't capped at 10,000. And so I asked him, I was like, do you think there's a cap at 20,000? And he was like, I don't really know. And I was like, maybe I could find out. We figured it's probably to get to 20,000 or beyond it, it's like grams a test. Within the last 4 weeks, I just bumped to 3 grams a test and 1,200 EQ. Outside of that, my blood pressure is good because I'm very that's a huge part of it.
How were those experiences for you with the
Oh, it was shit. I wouldn't count on it. I would say you're going to be likely to get beat up.
How do you feel like certain gear has affected you?
Probably my most widely used product is definitely.
Before starting this podcast, I just wanted to say that ideating steroids for a full show is not widely accepted because it discounts the real work, which is the backbone of this sport. And unfortunately spreads that an unsafe chemical solution is all you need for results. Both of these are antithetical to society's understanding of the sport. And while there will always be some that claim that PEDs are all you need, I would like to deliver an honest message of what is required for achieving top performance, as well as the dangers associated with this route. I received this comment from a user named Nightscarens. But just as a rock climber, the athletes undergoing this path in the sport are willing to put their life on the line for their passion. Just the danger between the two sports is different. Luckily, we do have safety nets in the sport, such as organ imaging and regular blood work. But that doesn't change the high risk one must accept in taking on this competitive lifestyle.
Hey, 2 weeks out.
What's up?
You're 2 weeks out. I mean,
yeah, and you're 2 weeks out, right? Yeah. Exactly.
It's going to happen.
The thing is, I wish that we could just like snap our fingers and get our blood work every single morning. I just can't. So
yeah, I know.
Would be handy though, because, you know, getting your blood work regularly, like we get like some parameters to you know, measure respectively how we adjust over time.
Yeah.
But I feel like we make such tiny adjustments as bodybuilders on a regular basis, especially in, say, like prep, for example.
Yeah.
Where it's like you get your measurements at one point in time. Like, and I feel like they're going to be changing so drastically over the course of the next few weeks, especially if you're like, say, 1 week, 2 week, 3 weeks out of, you know, show.
I mean, yeah, everything changes. Like the leaner you get, it messes with stuff too. You know? So, but I mean, it at least gives you an idea of where you're at. I mean, I don't know. I feel like the blood work deal is definitely a lot more important in, you know, more of like the early stages and in off season. If you're like someone that likes to really push gear and let your blood work guide you through that, I feel like there's a lot less variables changing in that at that time. I mean, that's the way that I go about doing it anyway.
Yeah, that's when I get my blood work done as well. But I do always want to know where my like estrogen stands and where a lot of my other markers stand as I go into prep, because I don't want to feel like shit during prep too. Not because I'm on low calories, but because, say, something's not in a proper range that makes me feel good. Yeah. And obviously this differs per person. Like I had this podcast with Togi's coach. Do you know Togi?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, you've seen this shit, right? Yeah. Yeah. So Togi's coach Tanner stated that Togi actually feels best at an estrogen level where he occurs gyno.
So what number is that for him?
Something on the higher end, obviously. I think it's something like over 50 or something. 50.
I mean,
50 or something like that.
So like
plus
all last year, my estrogen. So like most of last year, my cycle was like 3,500 test and 1,400 masteron, and most of my estrogen numbers for last year were like 130. But I felt fine. And I felt good at that place, but I was definitely holding a lot more water because of it. But I mean, I didn't have any. I mean, I've had gyno surgery, so it's like I didn't have any gyno issues. I didn't have any like weird mood swings or anything like that, and everything was working great, and I felt fine. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I was definitely holding more fat in like my lower half for sure, and definitely didn't like that. But it's just, I don't know, from what like we know about estrogen in men, like it should be in range, for the most part. So,
right.
So yeah, this year I've taken a different approach and keeping it under 50. So
how do you feel now?
Well, I definitely noticed it once I started using Arimidex. I was just like, I felt like, I mean, I went too far. So I was like, I could tell that I was low because like I had zero libido. Things would work. I just had no desire to. I just didn't care. And my wife was kind of like, do you still like me? What's going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
But and then I was guessing, I was like, it's probably really low, like a 10 or 15 or something like that. And then I went and got blood work, and it was like an 11. And I was like, okay, that's a little lower than I want. So,
right.
So yeah.
Was this like during a bulk?
This was just this last, so I was on, let's see. So like earlier this year, I was on cycle. I was not using any estrogen blockers, inhibitors, anything like that. And I was at like 125 was my estrogen number. And then talking to some of my buddies like Paul Barnett and Kurt Havens, they were like, you should try bringing it down and just see how you feel, how things look and all that. And I was like, yeah, sure. So, but I got to the point, like when I was doing that, I was like 280 pounds and got blood work done. And what led me to start dieting was because I use a lot of growth hormone, my insulin sensitivity started taking a little bit of a hit. And I was noticing that my fasting insulin number was higher than what I'm comfortable with it being. It was like a 20 when it should be like under 10. Like a 5 would be nice. But so it was the last time that I got blood work at that point, it was a 20, and I was like, well, shit, that's not good. So that's what took me to start dieting and took out the growth hormone and the insulin to make that change. And at that point, I was like, okay, let's stop this cycle. I'm going to go on a cruise of a gram of test and start paying attention. Well, we'll start dieting and, going low carb, getting my insulin sensitivity back. And I threw in the Arimidex. And then I did that for about, it's like 8 weeks at that, got my blood work done again. Estrogen was super low. But my, fasting insulin was like down to a 10. So I was like, okay, we're going to keep cutting, keep the growth hormone out. And because it was a 10, I had this game plan that I was going to start a cycle for this cut at that point and bump my test up to 2 grams, brought in Equipoise at 700 and Tren at 350 and started the cut, but dropped the aromatase inhibitors, dropped the Arimidex, and was going through that. Just got blood work done Tuesday, and we're going to see where my estrogen's at that point.
Okay.
But
damn, I wish you had the results.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I just got that done. So I have a feeling. So the way I have this game plan set up, this cycle set up, is like every 4 weeks, I'm increasing my doses, because I feel like I'm like all over the place here, but
no, it's okay. We kind of started all over the place, to be honest.
So what I'm doing with this cycle that I'm on is, there's a point earlier this year where Derek, More Plates, More Dates, reached out to me and he was like, what's the highest total testosterone number that you have on blood work? And I was like, over 10,000 was the number. Like it showed greater than 10,000. And he was like, okay, that'll work. He was looking for someone with a really high blood work number for Jeff Nippard's video on steroids.
Yeah.
And so he put me in contact with him, and he was like, share your blood work with him so he can use it in his video. And I was talking to Derek about it, and he said, we have a testosterone test that isn't capped at 10,000. The next time that, you're on like your highest doses, you should run a test and let's see what it is over 10,000. And I asked them, I was like, what's the highest you've ever seen on that? And they've seen 17,000 on their total testosterone test.
Did they say from what?
No, they couldn't disclose who it was
Gotcha.
or any of that. But and so I asked him, I was like, do you think there's a cap at 20,000? And he was like, I don't really know. And I was like, well, maybe I could find out. so I was talking to him, and we figured it's probably to get to 20,000 or beyond it. It's like 5 grams a test.
Yeah.
So
that's what started this entire project.
This cycle is we're moving towards 5 grams a test, and every 4 weeks we're getting blood work done to see what everything looks like, but to see what the total testosterone number is and see at what point do we cross the 20,000 threshold or actually hit a block at 20,000 where it says greater than 20,000. So right now I just bumped to 3 grams a test and 1,200 EQ and 350 Tren. And we're running this it's been 1 week at this point. So we got 3 more weeks of that. Then we go to 4 grams a test. We do 4 weeks of that. Then we go to 5 grams a test. 4 weeks of that. Hopefully somewhere in there at the 4 to 5 gram mark, we'll get past 20,000. I don't have to do it anymore.
Insanity.
But what's kind of fun also is that this all lined up perfectly with the Olympia. So it's like if all goes well at the Olympia, I could be like the guy with over 20,000 total testosterone, and I could like make a shirt or something. I don't know, but
that'd be funny.
I don't know. I've got a booth at the Olympia where like Steve and everybody's gonna be hanging out. So that'll be something to talk about, anyways, while we're there. But so that's what kind of like started this whole thing, and where I'm at now with all of that. And I'm at 3 grams a test now, and I'm guessing that I'm probably going to need a Arimidex back in. So I've already preemptively put back in the amount of Arimidex that I was using when I was on 1 gram a test, and it was a 10. So doing that, but we're going to see what the estrogen was on 2 grams a test and 700 EQ. So we'll see what we get there. But
Gotcha. Before I ask this question, I just wanted to say thanks for flying over here, by the way.
Oh yeah.
I've had a lot of people request that you come on this podcast.
Oh really?
Yeah, for sure.
That's cool.
For sure. So very excited to hear it. Everyone's very like interested in your project and everything that you do.
Yeah.
So
yeah, a lot of people have stuff to say about it.
Of course.
I mean, it's cool though. Like, I don't mind people like criticizing the things that I'm doing. It's the only thing that bothers me is when people get completely wrong what I'm doing, and that happens most of the time. Where people assume like I'm on, like I just went straight to 5 grams a test or something, and that's what I've just been. Like he's been on that for 5 years now. He's going to die any minute now. It's like, no, that's not. Yeah. I'm slowly working my way there. And if at any point something does, like that's why I'm getting blood work every 4 weeks, is if something starts to look funky, like if like my kidney function starts dropping, then it's like, okay, well this is not good. And we'll pull the plug and go back to, baseline and start over. And, I'm definitely not, a lot of people would look at it on the outside and be like, this is crazy, this is reckless. But at the same time, it's like, I'm paying attention to what's going on. And if something does start to show itself, then I'll pull the plug on it. Like, it's not a big deal. So I'm not just going to force myself through it. I don't have a death wish, so, but yeah, I mean, everything's been going great with it. And, this year, that whole deal, there was, after my cycle that I was running at the start of this year, before I took the break from the insulin sensitivity, there was another, like my kidney function was showing lower than what I was comfortable. So that's why I like dropped, instead of just dropping growth hormone, I dropped my Gear 2 down to 1 gram of test to fix that. I mean, the thing that I really realized was I stopped taking my kidney supplements, which I just forgot to buy more of it. And I was like, maybe it's fine. And then next time I get blood work and I see my GFR is like a 70, which isn't that bad, but still it's like when I'm used to seeing it at like a 90 or 100, I was like, okay, that's not cool. So I was like, okay, let's end that and get the astragalus back in there.
What are the kidney supplements that you're on?
Astragalus is the main one. I mean, that's the main ingredient, but like I'll get it from whether it's like HD Muscles kidney supplement or Revive's kidney supplement, or I'll just buy like the Now brand on Amazon of the astragalus. But yeah, so it's astragalus is the main player there.
How many grams of astragalus?
Minimum 4. When I
oh wow,
minimum 4 grams.
Okay.
So like the HD Muscle and the Revive kidney supplement, one serving of that, they both have 4 grams in it. So like that's like
one serving of each is 4 grams.
Yeah. So they have 4 grams. That's like the standard minimum.
Okay.
From what I've read from like Dante Trudel, talking about, like, he brought up the whole astragalus thing. He says if your GFR is like lower, or if you're like pushing a hard cycle, you probably want to take like 8 grams of it a day and split it up into like 4 and 4 in the day. And he's said when it comes to this kind of stuff, like the more the better. Like he's talked about guys that had like a 30 GFR going on 12 to 16 grams of astragalus and being able to recover it back to, back above 60, back above 70. So
did you discuss any anecdotal evidence on any side effects from going that level of a high dose of astragalus?
Peeing a lot.
Yeah,
but
right.
Otherwise,
diuretic effect.
Otherwise, no.
Gotcha.
So like I do 8 grams of it, especially because I push the gear pretty hard. But yeah, it's just like, it was like the end of last year, I ran out of the stuff I was using and I just didn't buy more and didn't think anything of it. I don't know. I kind of just was like, I didn't think, I wonder if this is actually doing anything, but that's what I kind of found out was, it does its job, so, but yeah, brought that back in. GFR is back above 90. And
I think that's what most people will wonder. You like, the little default thought in the back of your head, because everyone just trusts, and trust is good. Yeah. But everyone wants to see for themselves,
Oh yeah. I mean, I it's funny because like I didn't, but I did. I found out and it was like, okay, well, can't drop that. So, yeah, but everything's looking good now. So we're just kind of continuing on.
Cool
with it. So
real quick, guys. So while I was looking at the YouTube analytics, I actually saw that 85% of you guys that watch this channel are not subscribed. And I want to ask very little of you guys, but if you enjoy this podcast, if you find value in it, then please do me this one favor and subscribe to the channel, because doing so helps me get bigger and greater guests like the guests you are listening to today. Also, this channel is not sponsored, which means only the companies that I work with, which are Young LA and Huge Supplements, are the companies that can help fund this channel by you guys using the code NILE. So code NILE gives you a discount of 15% off of Young LA, and code NILE also gives you a discount of 10% off of Huge Supplements. And if you decide to purchase anything from any of these companies, it will help immensely for me by using my code. And this way, I can travel to other guests such as Dr. Mike Israetel next week, and also upgrade in equipment to make this podcast bigger and better for you guys. For everyone wondering, Chase Irons is a transparent informative creator that's done work in the bodybuilding space for years. So as you can obviously see already, how many years have you been doing this for? Or at least talking about it, discussing
talking about it like on YouTube. I think I've been talking about it for about 5 years. I've been on YouTube, I think, for 8 years at this point. The first 3, it was, maybe 6 years I've been talking about it. But I think something else that a lot of people get wrong about me is like how long I've been like really pushing the doses. And I haven't been doing these kinds of things except for the last year and a half.
Okay, I see.
Before that, it was all pretty mild.
How long have you been bodybuilding for?
I mean, I've been training since I was 16. I'm 38 now. I got on gear in 2010. So I've been on for 14 years.
You got on gear in 2010, and then you started lifting. Do you remember what year?
That would have been like 2003.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like 7 years natural, then gear for 14.
For double that now. So
nice.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, when I first started, I was very, very moderate with everything, mostly because I got all the side effects when I first started. Like the first cycle was 500 tests, and I got super bloated, and I was like a heavy aromatizer.
Oh, okay.
That was terrible. It was, I got all the worst side effects. And somehow, somewhere along
starting
the way,
at 500.
Yeah.
And did you know what your estrogen was at the time, or your other hormonal levels?
I mean, back then I had, like, nobody was talking about blood work.
So
in 2010, nobody gave a shit about any of that.
So there's definitely a propensity that, like, say your estrogen was out of range.
Oh, for sure.
So that's,
I bet it, I mean,
side effects.
It had to have been. I mean, it was just, it like guaranteed my blood pressure was terrible. Guaranteed my estrogen was super high. Like, it was so bad. Like in 2010, like, I remember my face was just like so like big and just like such bad moon face that it was like, I remember one day specifically, because I got up that morning and I went to GameStop to buy a game. And when I went to ask for whatever game it was, I can't remember, but what I remember is my face was so swollen that my lips were like, I couldn't talk properly. Like, they were like, my lips were like tripping over themselves when I was trying to speak to this guy. And I was like, what the hell's wrong with me? This is weird. And, but I was just so water attentive. Like my fucking ankles were super swollen. I just thought that this is how it is. This
and you don't happen to have any like edema in general?
No. I mean, the last 5 years have been good, but the first like 5 years was a wreck of side effects and feeling just assuming that this is how it is, I guess. You know, I was like, I guess this is what everybody deals with, and just kind of pushed through it, which I couldn't imagine what my blood work would have looked like when I was first getting started. But there was nobody guiding us like this. There was nobody talking about it. You just had the forums and seeing what anonymous people are doing. You don't know what they look like. You have no clue. And it could very well just be people repeating stuff that they heard somebody else that was repeating stuff. And it was just like, okay, this sucks, but if I want to be big, this is what I got to do, I guess. Yeah. And that's kind of like where it started. There was like a little period in there in the first 5 years where I was on like the GH15 forum and hearing about people using high doses of Tren and stuff. So I like played around a little bit with that at the start, but you know, I didn't really get anything out of it because I was still small back then, you know, like I was not built at all, and just playing around with big dumb doses. Had no time under my belt. So
how were those experiences for you with the Tren?
You know, it really wasn't all that bad. I took it to a crazy degree of like 300 mgs a day kind of thing.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was like 2,100, but I didn't do that for all that long. But it was like,
this was around the beginning of your journey?
It was like within the first 5 years.
Within the first 5 years.
So it was like 2015.
And this is when you're like 23 to 28 years old?
Yeah.
Roughly?
Yeah.
That's pretty savage.
Well, I didn't know what I was doing. I was
pretty
just
savage.
I didn't know what I was doing, but I was like,
oh shit,
this is what people do. So I'm going to try this. I'll try that.
Togi would be wrecked.
Yeah.
I was talking about how 80 milligrams a week was destroying him.
I feel like Trens never gave me a hard time. I've always used it in small amounts here or there, but like I said, I did play with it pretty hard back then and realized like, it doesn't really make much of a difference using all that much.
Okay. I've heard now from so many different.
Now I use 350 and I feel like that's a
350 a week.
Yeah. 350 a week. And that's a good
rather
amount.
than a day.
Rather than a day. I feel like that's a good amount. I feel like I get the benefits, you know, with with none of the issues.
No insomnia, no night sweats.
You know,
No
it happens, but it's so rare.
Okay, just randomly every now and then.
Yeah. The thing about bumping
Yeah.
the dose up, like when I would get to like 700 or 1,000 or 1,400 or 2,100, like I would just notice more hypoglycemia. I would notice much more night sweats. I would notice much more urinating in the middle of the night, like insomnia, waking up often to go pee in the middle of the night. The hypoglycemia is terrible. The higher you push the tren dose, like that's what I really would notice. It would just be random. Like even if I just ate a meal.
What were your calories that were you at a deficit or a surplus?
Back when I was doing that kind of stuff, I was just trying to be lean. So
Okay, so you were at a deficit.
I was always trying to diet.
Gotcha.
But it would be crazy because it'd be like I'd eat a meal and like 30 minutes later I'd go hypo and I would just be drenched in sweat. Like there were so many times, like back then I was a personal trainer, like a one-on-one trainer. And I'd be at work, I'd be training somebody and I would just feel that I was going hypo, like the someone would flip the switch and I would just be like, oh shit, I'm going to go hypo in the middle of the session. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting there like counting this person's reps or whatever. And I would just start to sweat.
Wow.
Like it would just start dripping off
Insanity.
of me. And my shirt would just be starting to soak. And I'd be like, can you give me a minute? I'm going to run to the front and like grab a protein bar or something. And I would just go up there and just like grab like 3 and just like start smashing them as fast as I could.
Right.
And then go back to my client and be like, all right, we can continue or whatever. But that was probably the worst that I'd experienced from that. But yeah, so on 350 tren a week, I mean, I feel good on that.
Notice no changes in your mental perspective or your mental state?
No, but I mean, it's like I've been off and on it for so long now. It's hard for me to tell. It's like,
Yeah.
The thing about it though is like I met my wife on gear like this is how she knows me. Like my personality on this stuff is what she fell for.
You seem like a very calm guy.
I'm very chill.
Yeah,
so
you seem very chill.
So in 2022, I took that entire year off from gear, and I feel like I didn't change much. My wife didn't really notice any difference in my personality or demeanor. And
What about your physique?
Oh, it went to shit. It went to shit. It was soft. Like, I mean, I went from like 260 pounds to 240. I managed to hold 240, but it was soft. It did not look good. But I was doing it for fertility to get my wife pregnant. And it took a year. Like it was literally from February to like February of being off everything. I mean, the thing that really made me stop in February 2022 is like, the whole pandemic thing was happening and people were dying, and like Cedric McMillan died at that point. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to stop for a second and just see what's going on. Got my heart checked out and got a bunch of things looked at, and
all those deaths scared me too. And
and
here now I know that according to all these open bodybuilders and other people that I've been taking bitch ass baby child cycles my entire life. So I thought I was going big leagues when I finally hit 500 tests this last bulking cycle, but obviously not. So
well, I mean, that's great though that you haven't had to. You haven't fooled around with much more. But yeah, like I stopped everything when lots of people were dying, and it just seemed a lot more common. So I took a break and went on a real TRT dose. It was like 125 milligrams of test every other week. It was super low. Like I was scared. And then about 6 months into that, my wife was like, got serious about wanting to get pregnant. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll start taking HCG then. and I'll get a semen analysis, see what I got. After 3 months on HCG, got my sperm checked, and it was a 0. Like, I was completely infertile. And
had you been running HCG at all since you?
Never.
Just never? Okay.
Yeah, I started it, ran it for 3 months because it takes 3 months for the sperm that are being created to actually even get out of you. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, let's go on HCG, run that for 3 months, got a sperm evaluation, and it was still 0. I was like, fuck. So I brought out the big guns, bought it FSH, which is follicle stimulating hormone. Mm-hmm. Started taking that. Got another sperm test 3 months after that, and I was up to 7 million, which is not much, but at least it's something. Like the bottom end of the range is like considered like 20 million. So I got to 7 mil on that. Waited another 2 months, and I had gotten to 12 million. And at that point, I got my wife pregnant. And as soon as my wife was pregnant, that's when I got back on cycle. it was I started slow, and it was like 400 test and 200 primo. And ran that for like a month. And in that month, I had been looking at growth hormone doses and getting interested in running high doses of growth hormone. And I'd never really gone super hard on it. Like, I had some periods where I'd played around with like generics at like 10 to 15 IUs, but I never really felt like I saw anything great from it. Just like lots of side effects, negative side effects.
Like what?
Like terrible edema, and like my feet and ankles got super swollen, high blood pressure, just bloat, all the negatives, and couldn't really tell if I was
reaping any positives.
Yeah, if I was getting any muscular gains from it, I couldn't tell. And I
couldn't also tell if you were staying lean.
Yeah, I just couldn't. It was questionable. Like I couldn't tell. I wasn't sure that what I was doing was like worth it. And in that like time period that I was off, I was like looking into a bunch of stuff, and did one of Phil Viz's seminars. He throws like an online seminar every like once a year or something, and I took part in that. And there's a portion in there that was like a Q&A. And somebody asked a question that got Phil to really open up about Olympia level doses and stuff that he knew guys were doing. And he really let the cat out of the bag and made me wonder, you know, he was talking about like 15, 20, 25 IUs of pharmaceutical growth hormone doses. 25? Yeah, like a lot of growth hormone. Like he was talking about, you know, a vial of Serostim a day, which is 18 IUs a day. And at that point, I just gotten access to that. And at that point, I was willing to try like 3 months of it, of doing a vial a day, 18 IUs a day. And
how long ago was this?
So this was last year, start of the year.
Okay.
Right after my wife got pregnant.
Is this around the same time that you, like, this whole project kind of came about?
No, so that project was just this year.
Okay.
Right.
All right, that makes sense. Because you know, obviously there's like advertisements, and like some of the podcasts will have like it'll basically state like 5 grams of steroids and then 18 IUs of GH.
So that started last year.
That started last year.
That just started last year. Okay. So I was off for a year, got my wife pregnant, went on a low dose of gear, and then was like, in March, I was like, let's see what growth hormone's all about. And so I added in a vial of Serostim every other day while I was on 400 tests and 200 primo, because I just wanted to be like, what does growth hormone alone do? And it was freaking crazy. Like I was off a year. I was 240 pounds at the end of that. Got on a small cycle, was sitting around 240 pounds. Got on the growth hormone and just saw things changing fast. And that was on an every other day dosage of 18 IUs every other day. And it was wild. Like my weight was climbing slowly. The first thing that I noticed was my shoulders and my arms. Like I'd wake up the next morning, my lats would be pumped, my shoulders would be pumped, my arms would be pumped. And I was just like, okay, this is what I have not experienced this before. I didn't have edema in my ankles, my feet. I wasn't experiencing negatives that were like, this isn't good. I was just getting thicker and saw that on a vial every other day. And in the pamphlet for Serostim, it says like, and I started with every other day because I was scared of like blood sugar side effects. I was scared that my fasting blood sugar would start to go up, insulin resistance and all that. So I started with every other day. In the pamphlet, it says for AIDS patients, do a vial a day. And if you experience negative side effects that you can't deal with, back it off to a vial every other day and continue forward with that. And so I did the opposite, went the safe route.
Right.
Did a vial every other day. After a week, when I realized, okay, this is cool, went to a vial every day. And things really started progressing quickly. I was gaining like 2 pounds a day, and it just seemed like it was all just getting slammed into like my chest, my traps, my shoulders, my arms, my lats. Like it all looked good.
What?
I know. I was just like, what is going on? Like I was still on a low dose of gear.
Just 400 tests.
Yeah, the 400 and 200. And the growth hormone just was blowing things up. And I was like, it was at that point where I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to be able to run the growth hormone like long term at this dose.
Yep.
So let's take advantage of it as much as we can. And let's start bumping up the test and bumping up the anabolics. So very quickly, I went from like 400 to 800 tests to 1200 tests. The most tests that I'd ever taken at that point, up until that point, was 1200. I played around with that a little bit, but so I went to 1200 tests, 1500 tests. And the reason that I had stopped at 1200 in the past was side effects, like estrogenic side effects. Didn't feel comfortable going any further than that.
These estrogenic side effects were these things that you would monitor and that you would adjust based off of, say, AIs or DHTs.
Yeah, no. In the past, I would get to like 1200, and if I noticed that, I was getting like sensitive nipples or something like that, I would back off the dose and bring in more Primo or Masteron or something like that. And it would go away, and I would continue on, get blood work, check stuff out, see where that's all at, and go from there. But so I was doing this. I got the 1200 test and things were fine. Went to 1500 test, things were fine. Went to 2000 test, things were fine. And all along, I'm bringing Primo up with it, and sometimes I'm swapping the Primo out for Masteron and just slowly titrating things up with that at like half the amount. So it's like 2000 test, 1000 Masteron, and just kind of like moving along.
Like you would do the Primo for a certain amount of weeks.
Yeah, and then I'd just like swap it out if I ran out.
Okay.
Yeah, Primo and Masteron, it was like I was treating them like they were interchangeable last year. It was just like, okay, I ran out of this. Okay, I have this. Let's do this instead. And I didn't really notice much of a difference. Yeah, I didn't really see a huge difference in whether I was using one or the other. And So as the months went by, I ended up buying more growth hormone to be able to keep going with it. And I ended up getting to, it was by like July, I was on 3,500 tests and 1,400 Masteron with a vial of Serostim a day. And that's where like all that peaked. And I held that for a few months. Like that's how I ended up getting into that spot, was just like I wanted to take advantage of the growth hormone, and shit was just working and things were feeling great. My blood work was looking normal. I wasn't getting blood sugar issues, and I ran basically that all the way up until the Olympia last year. And at that point I took a break and cruised from like, when was the Olympia? October? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so November, December, January. Took a break and then hopped back on cycle at the start of this year, which led to eventually talking to Derek and then starting the whole 20,000 nanogram per deciliter thing.
Gotcha.
So that kind of is the last year and a half of how I got to doing what I was doing and being labeled as the person that I am today.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
So, yeah. People are going to be like, that dude is definitely dying. What happened?
I was actually thinking about this earlier, but I felt like you could be a likely prime example for people of how it's very easy for people to make assumptions about dosages that people are taking. And I just think that's kind of a really silly assumption, because it's like saying that you should assume someone should be taking 60 milligrams of Adderall versus somebody who should be taking 10 milligrams of Adderall.
Oh, yeah.
But you literally have absolutely no clue.
Yeah.
You have no clue. Like, you're literally just assuming like you are God because you know what somebody is that you aren't, right?
Yeah.
But nobody knows that person better than themselves, or maybe the doctors that are checking them up.
Yep.
So, I mean, you did respond. It seems like you did respond reasonably to like your first cycles and doses when you first started gear.
Yeah.
Around the age of like 23.
Yeah.
But maybe because of you using it over time and building up this maybe so-called tolerance. I think a lot. There's so many people really like to be a little controversial about, I think, the term tolerance with gear, but it just seems to make sense. For any drug. Any drug in existence.
So people ask me all the time, like, why don't you get acne? Like, how do you use all that and you don't have any acne? It's like, I mean, I got it at first. Like I said, that first 7 years. Yeah, I got it, but I feel like I got a tolerance to, like, my body was just like,
right.
We're running on exogenous testosterone now. It's like, I don't know. I think there absolutely is a tolerance to it. I think that's a big reason why I'm able to do everything that I'm doing, because I've been doing it for 14 years. You know?
So that just brings me to want to discuss and bring about how I really don't care too much about it, but I care about it because it affects the world and it affects our guests and it affects the people that talk about this. Okay. But I think some of these comments that are on like mini clips and stuff are really ignorant when they decide to just claim that someone is lying, or when they claim that no, everybody feels like everyone's a god on Tren, or when they claim that like someone's exaggerating about what they feel. Like, dude, the guy's just trying to be open about like how he felt on a substance. Yeah. You don't know shit about this person. Don't act like you know this person. Don't act like you've never even met them in person. Like, I trust that Togi did not have a good experience on Tren. And that's just because who he is. Maybe that's his chemistry of his body. Yeah. It doesn't really have anything to do with his values or his mindset, or maybe how resilient he is in other obstacles or tasks in his life. Yeah. But he just did not mix well with Tren. Whereas other people mix just fine. Yeah. So I'm on my very first Tren cycle of my entire life right now. Yeah. For this prep, that I discuss on Tanner's podcast, or the podcast with Tanner. Yeah. Right now I'm taking 10 milligrams a day and titrate it up. So now I'm doing about 15 milligrams a day. So it's around 100 milligrams a week.
50 a day.
15.
15. Okay.
Yeah, of Trenes. Okay. So 100 milligrams a week. Togi did not have a good experience on 80. I don't really feel anything.
Yeah.
On 100 milligrams, which is good.
Yeah.
I did have that one night though that you and I discussed where it was either symptoms of low estrogen.
Yeah.
It was aligned with symptoms of low estrogen, or it could also be related to being hypoglycemic.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sounds related to Tren or related to
could be either
hormone imbalance.
Yeah.
Could be either.
Could
right.
be, for sure.
But aside from that, everything has seemed fine. I've been very hyper focused on trying to see how my mental perspective has been and how I act towards other people, how I judge other people and what I think about them.
Yeah.
And things have not been very different. I do feel a slight, it could be psychological, of course. I do feel like a little slight increase in, I feel like the smallest decrease in empathy, or at least the smallest decrease in the energy to be empathetic.
Yep.
Like I can be empathetic if I want to.
Yep.
I can tap into it, but sometimes you just feel like
I get that.
you don't care.
That
Or
makes sense.
You know what I mean?
I get that. Yeah, no, I mean, if I like, that's why I just went straight to 350. Like I feel like, because I've played around with the microdosing Tren, and I was just like, I don't. This is not Tren. This is not the Tren I know. I don't notice it. I don't really notice much of anything here, which is fine. That doesn't mean, I say that all the time to like people, watching my podcast. I'm like, you don't necessarily want to feel anything, like the drugs are going to do what the drugs are going to do behind the scenes, whether or not you're like actually feeling any of it.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like typically more milligrams is going to have more of a result.
Right.
So it's kind of, you push the boundary to see what can you get away with without feeling it. And I mean, that's why I just go straight to 350 and that's that. So
that's why I enjoy having this podcast, is I got to talk to people on the other side of the spectrum, because I've been the person, I guess, on the side of the spectrum that most people don't believe exists, I guess, where I was more like I was just like this influencer, content creator. Yeah. I got my pro card on Halotestin and Winstrol. And it was men's physique though, so
I mean,
it's a little different.
It's something. I mean,
yeah,
that's awesome though.
Which is crazy, because now that I'm running much bigger of a cycle, I'm not seeing that drastic of a difference.
Yeah,
I'm harder. I'm a lot more full, but also being a lot more full, it's a little bit more difficult to come in just as dry, if that makes sense.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, well, that's what they say is like the bigger you get, the harder it is to land the plane.
Just like my coach said, like literally you talk to, like he literally said earlier today, because we were having a discussion of some people that we know that are competing, that like super heavy weights almost never really come conditioned enough.
Yeah.
And just, they're so fucking huge.
I know.
They're so fucking huge. It's so hard.
Yeah.
That composition is insane. Like
it's a fine line of like, insane. how do you get the water out and not lose all the fullness? And it's like, I mean, that's what I've definitely seen. Not saying that I'm like huge or anything, but it was just like being 280 and I'm like 240 right now, and having like hardly any carbs throughout that whole process. It's just like you see so much fullness like disappear. But what you kind of have to keep reminding yourself in that like situation is like, just because the fullness is not there doesn't mean that the fibers are leaving with it. Like those muscle fibers are still there. It's just they're waiting to be refilled back out. So that's kind of like what my process is right now, is I'm just trying to get, as lean as possible before I fill those fibers back up and see what we got. So, yeah.
But yeah, basically, as I was saying though, I've always been on the lower end in the spectrum, where I'm a lot more conscious of my health, especially my mental health, just because of the things I've been through.
Yeah.
So like being number one, like going to Olympia and being Mr. Olympia is obviously my biggest goal. But at the same time, I think just how important my health is and my mental perspective and my connections with the people around me is number one, right? Like family, God, my life, all of these things, like no matter what, even though my career is the most important is one of the most important things to me and my biggest goal. It doesn't take away from what I think life is really about.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like in the place where I am, it just sounds a lot safer and a lot more comfortable where my body is right now to titrate up at the doses I'm at.
Yeah.
So, and obviously that's what you did too.
Yeah.
You're just way older and way more experienced.
I mean, I'm just
so
yeah. I mean, that exactly like that's how I got to where I am now, and now it's like, to me, 3 grams of test is like not a big deal, which a lot of people would just be like, that's fucking insane. What are you talking about?
Right.
But it's like, I mean, I've worked myself up to this, and I don't know. I don't see the negative there. And I feel like as long as I'm paying attention to, you know, blood pressure, resting heart rate, my blood work, getting that done regularly, I can see if something is coming, and I can stop before, you know, it goes any further, before something is going to happen.
So going along that, what are all the health precautions and tests that you take to be as risk adverse? Because this is a pretty, you know, intense project, especially respective to everybody else and their experiences.
As far as blood work goes, the basics would be like CBC, CMP, which is complete. CBC is complete blood count. CMP is comprehensive metabolic panel. CMP, cystatin C, that's like your main kidney function. CRP, that's your inflammation levels. Lots of C's. Hemoglobin A1C for that. I mean, that one's just kind of tells you your last 3 months of what your blood sugar's been doing.
Essentially your basic metabolic panel.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm kind of getting through now. But
what other add-ons do you add?
I mean, like fasting insulin is important to me, because that's really going to tell you whether or not you're insulin resistant or not. Because like if you look at just like your blood sugar,
right? Yep.
It's like your fasting blood sugar, it's a 90. But if your fasting insulin's a 25 to keep you at a 90, it's like, okay, that's bad. Like that means you're pumping out a shitload of insulin just to keep you at a 90. So I think that one's extremely important that a lot of people overlook. The cystatin C test is the kidney test that we want to look at. GGT for your liver is going to be way more accurate for your liver function versus like AST and ALT, because your muscles put off AST and ALT. So the more muscle you have, the harder you train, the higher those are going to be, and that's going to freak people out. Be like, oh, those are at 100. What do I do? But so your GGT is a way better liver marker. I always like to look at vitamin D to make sure that is in you know, kind of in the middle of the range, middle high end of the range, because, you know, depending on the season, that kind of goes up and down. And then like outside of that, looking at blood pressure, paying attention to your blood pressure, paying attention to resting heart rate, because I mean, those are going to be the things that are really going to be related to your kidney health, like before like the GFR in your cystatin C starts to go down. Like to be able to tell whether or not you have left ventricular hypertrophy without going and getting an echocardiogram would be watching your resting heart rate and seeing if it's climbing over time. Because if it is climbing over time, it means the walls of your heart are getting thicker, in that the space in the ventricle is becoming smaller. So the heart has to pump more times in a minute to push the same amount of blood as someone that has a normal size ventricle. So someone that has a resting heart rate of like 80 versus someone that has a resting heart rate of like 50 means the person, like if they're twins, the person that has to pump 80 times is to move the same amount of blood as someone that's pumping 40 times, because their heart, the inside of it's just smaller, and it has to just keep pumping faster to keep up with that. It's like that's a pretty easy way to tell if your heart's functioning properly or not. My resting heart rate right now is a 53. So I'm like, okay, I don't really need to worry about that, but I'm still going to go get an echocardiogram to make sure, that everything's fine. But it's like highly unlikely that there's an issue there, that and like my blood pressure, as long as that's under 120/80, then I know,
Right.
Because that also, like when that's elevated, that's going to cause
Right.
left ventricular hypertrophy. That's going to cause kidney damage.
And there's a cool thing everyone was talking about because you were on like how much gear and like your blood pressure was still under 120/80.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so within the last 4 weeks, like I just bumped to 3 grams of test and 1200 EQ. So I was on 2 grams of test and 700 EQ and 350 Tren. And yeah, like my lowest blood pressure that I took in that period was like 100/58 or something like that. Like it's very low. But yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on the day, but like my blood pressure right now, it runs between like 105/60 to like 115/70. So
Wow.
It's somewhere around there, but it's not, it's like, I do use like an ARB. I do use.
What's the ARB?
So right now I'm using Olmesartan,
Telmisartan.
not Telmisartan.
Okay. Did you switch or
I switched
how come?
because Olmesartan is better for your kidneys. It's more protective of your kidneys than Telmisartan is.
Okay.
Telmisartan is great because it's very good for like insulin sensitivity, stuff like that. But I just switched to Olmesartan because I'm getting to like some higher doses of gear, and I am very cautious of my kidneys. And I feel at this point, like my insulin sensitivity is very good at this point. So it's like, do I really need Telmisartan to get that side benefit? I don't think so. So I switched to the Olmesartan. I mean, they're both good. They're both solid.
Is there any extra or is there side effects that you've noticed with Olmesartan versus Telmisartan?
No, I didn't have any. I didn't have any of like the potassium, the hyperkalemia issues of Telmisartan. I haven't noticed any negatives from any of that. But
Are there any other ancillaries or protocols that you take for your blood pressure and your resting heart rate?
so one thing that I use, but it's not necessarily for my resting heart rate, even though a lot of people would be like, whatever. I do. I am using Nebivolol right now, but it's only because I'm using a shitload of Clen. So like putting those two together will cancel out the heart rate effects. So like Nebivolol is going to block the beta-1 receptors, and those are only in your heart. Things like ephedrine and Clen are going to be activating the beta-1 and beta-2 and beta-3, which is heart and muscles and all over, to get, more like fat burning out of that. So with the Nebivolol blocking the beta-1, then my resting heart rate doesn't climb from using ephedrine and Clen. So it just cancels that part out to prevent left ventricular hypertrophy. So I get all the benefits of burning fat from Clen and ephedrine and none of the negatives of heart growth. So that's why that's in there. If I dropped the Nebivolol, I'm sure my resting heart rate would probably go up 10 beats. But if I also dropped the Clen and the ephedrine, it would probably stay right where it is.
Yep.
So yeah. But yeah, I mean, the ARB and the beta blocker, those are like things that even if you weren't using Clen, if you needed that would definitely be a route to go. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, like my blood pressure is good because I'm very hydrated. That's a huge part of it. And I don't have an affiliation with this company, but Chris Tuttle's Drink More product is a great electrolyte additive to your water. I've been using that since he started the company like a year and a half ago, but it's just like this, it's like a Mio squeeze bottle, and it's just filled with electrolytes, and it's delicious. And I mean, it fucking works great. Makes me want to drink a ton of fluids. So that I think that's a huge part of it, staying hydrated. The other thing, I always get in 10,000 steps a day. Like that's a big thing for me. And then instead of just like regular cardio, doing HIIT cardio.
Oh, okay. How often do you do HIIT cardio?
Like 3 times a week.
That's a good amount.
It's a good amount.
That's a high amount.
I go pretty hard on it too. I mean, it's
high,
like.
Do you know how high your heart rate goes?
I mean, I go
with zone 5 for HIIT.
Yeah, I mean, it's
sure.
like 170, 180, but it's like I go to failure on cardio.
Yeah.
If I go to failure on cardio, it's like I have in my gym. I have an assault bike, and like it's where you got the arms going, and you're like, So I'll go all out on that for 45 seconds, but at 30 seconds, I'm gassed.
Yeah.
And I'm trudging along the last 15 seconds.
I'm always gassed after 30 seconds.
Yeah. And then I hop off that thing and I go walk around for like 4 minutes. And then I hop back on and crank out another one.
Nice.
It's brutal, but that
feels great though.
It's great. Yeah, it's really nice.
Great, bro.
It's good. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, that's a big part of it, doing like hard cardio like that. And then I get in the sauna every day. I spend 20 minutes in the sauna daily. And it's like, it's a hot sauna. Like I just adjusted mine to get to 230 degrees. It's pretty spicy in there. Since I've had it, it had a cap where it would only get to 194. But I didn't like that because it would get to 194. I'd get in the sauna, I'd throw water on the rocks, it'd get all steamy, and doing that, it lowers the temperature a little bit. So it would drop to like 175, 180. And that would bother me. I want it to be higher, so.
If you feel like any of the medications that we spoke about today may benefit you, such as BPC 157, GH secretagogues such as Tesamorelin, IGF-1, oxandrolone troche, semaglutide, then you can obtain these from Transcend HRT, and the link for that will be in the bio. If you feel like you're experiencing symptoms of low testosterone, such as depression, anxiety, lack of motivation, as well as lack of sex drive, then you can get this checked out as well by getting your blood work done at Transcend, and they will provide you expert medical analysis. Transcend HRT has worked with many professional bodybuilders and pro athletes such as Thor Bjornsson, Phil Heath, and Jeremy Buendia. And if you feel like this podcast has any relevancy to you, I do believe that this clinic will provide of great benefit to you as well. I was going to ask, do you not feel pretty fatigued or even like, I don't know, high cortisol levels from doing HIIT cardio that often?
I mean, yeah, I do. And that's one reason why I just bought a cold tub to help get that cortisol out. And I think it will help a lot. But like all this week, I'm taking off from HIIT cardio.
Gotcha.
So it's like, I am very consistent at it, but I'll take a week off here and there from it. But I did just buy a cold tub. I think that's going to help out a lot in that regard. But that's also, the sauna and the cold tub, those are both related to blood pressure too. Training your veins to be able to expand and contract is a big part of it. Like, because if you're not doing that, your body kind of like loses that ability to dilate and constrict them. And the better that they are at that, I mean, because like your veins are kind of muscles too. Yep. The better that they are at expanding and contracting, the better it can regulate its own blood pressure, and the less ARBs and whatever you need to take. So
don't ever want to get them rigid.
Right.
That's where shit starts getting
right. So yeah, I mean that's a big reason why I get in the sauna daily, to help keep that all going well. But yeah, I mean,
I've been doing cold showers every morning for the last 2 years, which has been freaking amazing.
Yeah.
I'm definitely cold adapted, because it doesn't shock me as much anymore. And also when it's the summer here now, this new shower that I have just doesn't get cold enough anymore.
Oh,
It's just getting warm, so it sucks. But I do miss the ice baths and hot
I can't.
tubs,
I've been wanting one for so long, and I've been like digging, looking for one to buy, and I finally like found a setup that I'm confident in. That's going to be, that's going to last a decent amount of time, and so that I literally just ordered that. So it'll be here in a couple weeks. So that'll be nice to add to the training schedule. But yeah, that's, I mean, my entire like my entire life is like, I basically live like a bodybuilder. Like that's, and it revolves around all those things. I don't have any other job that I'm doing. Like I go to my gym at like 9 in the morning and I'm there until 5 or 6 and, go home and walk my dog and go to bed. Like, yeah, it's definitely like a lot of people don't have that ability. Like they've got to go do their 9 to 5, So I don't expect a lot of people to be able to do what I do to keep things the way that they are, but that's the reason why I can do what I do, So
how often do you get blood work done?
I mean, it's when I'm not doing this kind of thing, because like right now it's every 4 weeks.
Yep.
When I'm not doing this, it's like every 3 months. But I'm not outside of what I'm doing right now. I usually keep things pretty static, So like if I'm like last year, when I finally got to the point when I titrated up and I was on 3,500 test and 1,400 Masteron, I went and got blood work. Saw what things were like. Everything looked good. So I held it for 3 months. Didn't really change anything. Went and got blood work again after 3 months just to make sure things are still good. Things are still good. Yeah. So when I'm not like fucking with the doses, then I'll give it a few months.
What about exams?
Like echocardiogram kind of stuff.
Yeah, echocardiograms.
I mean, that's like a yearly thing, the EKG, echocardiogram, liver ultrasound, kidney ultrasound. Something that's a lot less frequent would be like an CT angiogram.
Yeah, how often have you done those?
I've done one.
Done one.
Yeah.
How was it?
I mean, it was good. Everything was clear. So yeah, but so that they inject you with dye, and they do an MRI of your heart and see how everything looks.
I hate what it sounds like.
Yeah,
you die in your feet.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, everything's clear there. Yeah, and then what was it in 2022 when I stopped everything because I was scared? I went and got a calcium score done. Came back with a number on that. It was 123, which I was like, shit, that's not good. But then I like looked into them a little bit more, and it's like people come back with numbers that are like 1,000, 2,000, 5,000. Like that number can go super high. But even then, I still didn't like it. So that was another, like through 2022, that was one thing that I was really trying to fix. And
how so?
Well, so vitamin K2 is the main thing. Keeping cholesterol super low, and vitamin K2 is like the protocol for basically removing calcium from your arteries. And I mean, like that's the thing that vitamin K2 does is it goes in, it takes calcium where it doesn't belong and puts it where it belongs in like your teeth and your bones. So if calcium is in your soft tissues, like your arteries, your organs, wherever, it goes in, it grabs that, takes it, puts it in your bones and teeth. And so I came across a supplement that was made by this guy who, I can't remember what his name is. It's like Peter Thiet?
Peter Attia?
No.
I
know who you're talking about, but no.
I love Peter Attia though. I don't even know if what he's created.
I don't know if he's created something, but I think his name's Peter Thiet is the guy I'm talking about. He made this product. It's called Concentrated K. It's a K2 supplement, and
sounds like another kind of supplement.
Concentrated K. So he made this product, and it was because he himself had a terrible calcium score, but he brought his back to 0 he started off doing it naturally, eating a bunch of like high vitamin K foods, which unfortunately is things like sauerkraut and bratwurst and things like that, like
weird stuff.
Yeah. So he made this supplement that has very high amounts of vitamin K in it.
It's a bratwurst.
I found out about that, started taking that at a high dose, did it for a year, went and got another calcium score done after a year, and it was a 0.
Wow.
So I was like, okay.
We did the same cardio regimen and everything else throughout the entire process, as well as things for your cholesterol, or did anything change with those?
So I brought my cholesterol way down too. Okay. So my going back to 2022, as soon as I stopped, I was, like I said, I was scared. I went to a doctor, told him everything that I had been doing, and was like, I want to get checked out. I want to get things looked at. Can you help me? And because I was being open and honest with him about it, because I was like, I've been on gear for a fucking decade. Help. And surprisingly, he was like, okay, yeah, let's do it. Let's get you a calcium score done. Let's take a look at this stuff.
Here for a decade and just don't think about it, you know?
Yeah.
I got lucky finding my doctor, realizing that he's been doing this shit with bodybuilders for forever. And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. So he hooked me up, and, he did my blood work, and he was like, I think it would be smart to get you on rosuvastatin to really knock your cholesterol way down, and that should help with bringing that calcium score down, or at least preventing it from getting any higher. And so I've been doing that since 2022.
Did you feel any side effects from the statin?
No. So he only gave me 5 milligrams, 5 milligrams a day, which is the smallest dose possible. And, because like a lot of the people that experience like side effects on it, they're getting like 30 to 40 milligrams a day. So no, I haven't had any issues with that. That plus ezetimibe brought my LDL down to like between a 30 and a 40.
Nice.
So it's super freaking low. The only thing that I don't like about the whole statin deal is there's information coming out now that it's like related to dementia and those kind of neurological diseases and stuff like that, which is not good.
Yeah.
But I've only been on it for 2 years. One of my sources just got his hands on Repatha, which is a PCSK9 inhibitor. So I'm going to drop the rosuvastatin and switch to that.
Okay.
So
do you know when you're going to do that?
He literally just got it in and is shipping it to me now, so
nice.
You
should definitely tell me, or I want to hear about what your experience is with.
So
later,
I literally just as soon as I got my blood work Tuesday, I stopped the rosuvastatin, and as soon as that comes in, I'm going to start taking that, and then we'll get blood work again at the end of this 3 gram test bit, and we'll see where the LDL is sitting. So,
speaking of all these ancillary medications and stuff, Tanner says hi, by the way.
Yeah, Tanner's great, man. Yeah. I saw that he was on here. I was like, that's awesome, dude. But Tanner came to my gym. We did a little podcast together. I trained with him.
He's a smart kid.
He's a very smart kid.
Smart.
Yeah, he's a very smart kid. Yeah, he's on top of his shit.
It makes me feel like I'm not doing enough. We're studying enough.
I mean, he's
a little bit younger than I.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's necessary to worry about all that, but it's like, I don't know. It's so funny because like when I watch like Fuad's podcast, I realize like, man, he doesn't know anything about any of this stuff at all. But it's like, how did he get where he is? Like, being a bodybuilder is like
so many different types of experience.
I mean,
right?
Yeah. I mean, that's.
Yeah.
You don't need to know all this little stuff to get big as fuck.
You really don't. You don't.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what coaches are for. Hopefully the right coach. That's what the right coaches are for, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just so fun to know this shit because it's basically like you're we're weird, you know. We're pretty weird, and we're like basically like doing things that's like I don't know. We're playing with science that Peter Attia likes to deal with, except that we also love to add dangerous drugs to it.
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah,
it's an interesting lifestyle.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like you can't say that there's not bodybuilders that don't care about longevity and biohacking.
Yeah,
because there's a fuck ton that do. It's just that we're weird, where we also like to take things that will also potentially take off a couple of years off our life as well at the same time. So it's more of like a. Hopefully you're just like canceling.
It's a big balance. Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah. So. Yeah, but I mean, I think it's that we're definitely doing a hell of a lot better than we were when I was first getting started, because there was no help. There was no blood work talk. There was no the supplements. It was creatine and protein powder and your pre-workout.
I mean, I think all you guys, like, you know, Derek, Steve, you, like all these guys talking about all these things, and now even Tanner is helping immensely with this.
Well, that's just it. I wish so badly that I had this kind of guidance when I was first starting, because
instead of just fucking forums,
I feel like I would have been so much further along. I would have dealt with so much less side effects, so much less bullshit if I would have just had better online guidance from anything than what I had. So
how do you feel like certain gear has affected you?
You know, I mean, like I said, I've been probably my most widely used product is definitely Tren over the last 14 years. I've always had it here and there in small amounts. There've been small breaks from it, but it's like, it's always been there.
I mean, aside from the, you know, obviously the reactive hypoglycemia, which is honestly not a good experience. Aside from that, I mean, it's pretty great that like you don't really deal with any of the other side effects. So, because that varies so drastically amongst people. And that's why, like, one of the reels that were posted of Mahmoud, do you know Mahmoud Aldora?
Yeah.
He was a 212 Olympian.
Yeah.
And I mean, just like a lot of other bodybuilders, while Tren can be a magnificent tool for a lot of them, there's also a lot of bodybuilders that don't use it.
Yeah, don't use it.
Because like it's not necessary.
No.
Like, I don't know why people think like the only way to get this look is with Tren, because that's not true. It's just dryness and fullness.
Well, I hate that shit, because it's like people will send me a picture of somebody back. What's he using? I don't fucking know what he's using.
No, bro.
You can't tell.
No, you can't.
He's lean. He dieted his ass off. I don't know. He could be on fucking Deca and D-ball. Who knows?
I feel like you could say he's on a hardener. But that could be so many things.
I know.
There could be so many things.
It's such a ridiculous thing. Like those videos that Derek used to make where he was like guessing the steroids that they were like, this is ridiculous, Derek. I mean, it got views. I mean,
no, for sure. It's fun content.
But yeah.
But I think some people, it's just easy to take a lot of these things a little too seriously.
Yeah.
Same thing as Togi and all this other content. People take a lot of this stuff too seriously when it's content, you know. Same with Greg as well. Like Greg's not that as aggressive in person, especially if you listen to people that he talks about in person. He's not going to be that way.
Exactly. Well, it's
for the purpose of the video.
That's just it. Like, I mean, because he just made a video on me last week, and I knew he didn't have any like ill will behind it. Like I mean, it's his deal. It's what he does, you know. And as soon as he made it, I reached out to him and I was like, thank you so much for making a video on me. Finally, I appreciate it. This is great. I'm going to make a reaction to it. And he's like, awesome, you know, have fun with it, whatever. And I'll see him at the Olympia, you know, and I'll shake his hand, take a picture, and it'll be cool. But it's just, you can't take everything so seriously, you know.
I'm sure there's some people that feel great on a gram plus of Tren with no issues whatsoever, and then there's some people that will feel that shit on 80 milligrams.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I think the big thing that gets people with Tren is the sleep, and if you can't sleep, you're gonna feel like shit. Yeah, be pissed off. My sleep quality has gone down, but I think that's related to everything. Yeah, I mean, dieting and being super
and all
lean,
the other compounds as well.
Yeah,
to be honest, I really don't feel hardly anything from the Tren right now, so that's nice. But what that tells me too is that I don't want to up the dose because I don't want to start feeling anything.
I mean, yeah. Well, like you said, it's not necessary. Like Roman Fritz, he did 12 shows or some shit last year. He didn't use Tren at all last year. Not once. And he was, most shows that he was in, he was the most peeled guy on the stage.
Yeah.
You know? So
I mean, I gotta say, I really did like, not like condoning this or anything, but I really did like my little Winstrol Halotestin combo for my pro show. Like I have some videos where I look pretty cool.
I'm sure.
like right now I'm looking at myself and I'm obviously bigger from the bulk. That's a given. Now, if you just take out the obvious about, like, for example, I'm bigger and it's 5 years later.
Yeah.
Like, I'm more full, but I feel like my lines aren't coming in as nicely. Obviously, I haven't dropped the watery compounds completely yet.
Yeah.
And then I haven't upped the aromatase inhibitors. And once that happens, maybe I will come drier.
Yeah.
And then I can, like, talk about it. But aside from that, I mean, as simple as it as, like, 50 milligrams of Winstrol and 10 milligrams of Halotestin, and the Halotestin was 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, that's such a, I feel like that's a simple cycle.
Well, what a lot of people
make you look hard.
What a lot of people don't realize is, like, the leanest and driest that you're ever going to be is when you're natural and on nothing and shredded.
That is 100%. Well, actually, I just, the way that I see it though is it's purely because the water retention required, especially to hold in your muscles.
Yeah.
It's like there's a homeostasis required, right? For your subcutaneous layer and in the muscles.
Yeah.
Now, if you take a dryer, like a hardener, then that will help change the composition of the water retention within your muscles versus in your subcutaneous layer.
Yeah.
So I would like to argue that the leanest and driest you'll ever be is if you're natural and then you decide to take some oral.
There's some winning halo in.
Yeah, some winning halo in or something.
But seriously,
be a fucking half natty or a fake natty.
Yeah.
And
If you go and look at natural shows and the people that are peeled, they're fucking peeled. Like, they're dry as a bone.
Yeah,
it's insane.
they're just not full, but they're peeled.
Yeah, they have no fullness. They have no fullness.
Sure.
But man, they get peeled, and a lot of these. That's what
helps explain the whole super heavyweight not being as peeled as well. You know.
Oh yeah, yeah, and but it also it's things like that frustrate me. With so many guys come to me that are just like 20% body fat or higher, and they just want to start steroids because they think it's just going to magically make them leaner.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like, you got to figure out your food before you figure out any of this other stuff.
Right.
Because otherwise, you're just going to get high blood pressure and be bloated and upset. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's.
So, is there anything that you would recommend people against?
Against?
Yeah.
I would say stay away from the fad stuff. Like, I think that like Ment. I've never used it. Mm-hmm. Ment and DHB. Those are two I've never used. I have no desire to use them. I know people have used Ment and had a good reaction to it, but it's just like we've got all these other steroids that people have been using for decades and have had great success with them. I don't think that those two in particular can bring anything to the table that's gonna be better than what we already have. And as far as DHB goes, I've only seen really bad things come from that with regards to like blood work specifically, like really fucking up kidneys, really fucking up blood pressure and inflammation levels. Like people, like their CRP will be like, you want it to be less than 1. And I've seen so many people on DHB with CRPs that are over 10. And it's just, when your CRP is that high, it's almost like, it's almost guaranteed that you're just storing plaque. You know, if your inflammation's high and your triglycerides and your LDL is high, like you're storing plaque, and that's not a good thing. So I would definitely, I don't recommend anybody messes with DHB. I know, I'm pretty sure Tanner likes Ment. So he's one of the few has, said that he's seen good things with it, but I don't have any desire to try that. Yeah, I mean, those are going to be the main things. Right. Otherwise,
just differs per person. Just like he and I had the discussion too. Like some people prefer not to do EQ or use EQ, and they also have their own personal scientific reasons and such. Tanner loves it.
Hey, I mean,
Worked
years
for him.
ago, it was like,
same as Togi.
yeah, like 10 years ago, like that was, EQ is one of the things that I tried and it was terrible. I hated it. And I was like, I'm never going to use this again. My blood pressure was through the roof. And here I am now. I'm on 1200 EQ, and it's like this is pretty good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's one thing that a lot of people also don't understand is that as you grow, as you get bigger, as you build more muscle, and you get leaner, like you're a different bodybuilder. You're going to respond.
Your
differently
response
to these
changes.
things. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, things
I had
change.
the same experiences as you, where my first cycle. Well, my first cycle was the orals because I fucked up. And it's a long story. But when I finally did my first injection, it was 250 test. And
As it should be.
I think I'm pretty sure I'm a good responder because obviously I've been doing lower dosages respective to most.
Yeah.
I'm also shorter. I'm like 5'7.5".
Yeah.
Right up to 5'8",
Yeah.
so I don't need as much as other people. Calories are also calorie maintenance is also a lot lower, so everything just makes sense that what I need in general for anything is just less than the average guy.
That's a good point.
But 250 test, water, got bloated, a little bit of acne stuff. Then when my estrogen went back down, and I started managing my estrogen, side effects was reduced, but I still made some significant weight gains over the course of a good amount of several weeks. That was great. It was awesome. Versus now I can go on 500 tests and I feel almost nothing.
Yeah.
Like I feel no changes to my mental perspective. I just feel more driven and motivated. And like I can manage everything and I can manage my blood work well on different doses than I could before. So it's very interesting to see how the response does change over time.
Yeah. That's good that you said I feel more motivated and that, like, that's the difference between me and the different levels of testosterone is like, because when I went off test in 2022, I didn't really notice, like I still felt fine. Everything still worked fine. I was just kind of like, whatever. Maybe my motivation was down a little bit, but I wasn't like depressed or anything like that. I was just kind of like, meh, whatever. And then it's like being on more, the motivation just kind of goes up, but I don't really.
It's like the excitement to do things is more up, I'd say, right?
Yeah, no, I'd say that. Yeah, for sure. So it's interesting.
Is there any compound that you would recommend someone against that you have done? Or any specific compound? Or even dosage or regimen.
I can't, like, it's like I can't recommend what I'm doing.
Yeah, obviously don't recommend.
I can't recommend
I know what you're going to say.
But it's just like, it's like I what I recommend is titrate up and use as much as you can handle without any side effects.
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm doing is I'm just titrating up and being like, okay, everything's still good. All right, we're good.
What about a specific compound?
I'm going to say Prami. So that's one compound that I had a terrible experience with, in that I took it because, like, I didn't. What was the reason? I can't even remember why I did it, but it was like, I think it was because I could get it quicker and it was cheaper than Caber or something like that. And so, like, I got it and I used it and I felt so sick.
Wow.
And I felt so sick and like nearly passed out from it. It was the weirdest thing. I remember I took it and it was like.
Do you know where I put your prolactin level?
No, I wasn't. I did.
Okay.
I didn't. All what I knew was I was lactating.
Whoa, crazy.
So I was like, okay, we got to take something for this.
Yeah. Did you ever have this discussion with Tanner? Because he prefers Prami over Caber.
Does he really?
I think
didn't know that.
I can't remember what the reasons are for Caber, but it was something about the long term.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't use either one now. Like I don't mess with it. I don't mess with prolactin at all. But it's when I took it a long time ago, I remember I took it and then I went to go drive to the mall to put flyers on windows because I was a personal trainer back then. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was driving to the mall and I felt like I was going to fall asleep.
Oh, wow.
And I also felt super sick, like I was going to barf. And I remember I just immediately, I got to a parking lot, parked it, and literally passed out.
Wow.
In my car, woke up like 2 hours later. And I was like, okay, never taken that again. But So that could have been just like a freak thing, but I don't know.
Well, let's see these questions. Of course, some silly questions like how is it possible at that level of gear? Of course. Wait, so did you actually hit 5 grams of gear total?
Gear total. I mean,
Like
so
right-
3,500 test and 1,400 masteron is 4.9.
Okay. So essentially, yeah.
Basically.
Wait, but aren't you on Tren now too, or did you remove some of the stuff?
Well, right now right now it's 3 grams of test, 1,200 EQ, and 350 Tren.
Okay.
So
like 4.5.
yeah, we're close.
Okay.
But
Close.
total anabolic. So
All right.
close.
Close enough.
In 3 weeks, we'll be over it. We'll be over the mark. In 3 weeks, the plan is. Where am I at? I'm at 3 grams right now. So yeah, so in 3 weeks it'll be 4 grams of test, 1,400 EQ. So that'll be 54,
Wow.
and then three. I think 350 Tren. I might take it out at that point because I plan on ending dieting at the end of this little chunk. So 3 more weeks of dieting, and then once I do 4 grams of test, we bring in the carbs and start growing a little bit. Bring back the growth hormone, bring back the insulin, be on 4 grams of test and 1,400 EQ and start growing. And do that for the last 8 weeks of this whole
Gotcha.
thing. So
Joe24 Dan asks, what's the daily caloric intake?
right now it's not very good. It's
Well, before, because right now doesn't really count because you're on this vacation. Real quick.
so like I've been dieting. So calorie count, it's between like 2,400 and 2,800. It's been pretty low,
Okay.
but I've been
For the deficit.
deficit.
And how long has the deficit been?
It's been 10 weeks.
10 weeks. Okay. And before that, what was the calorie at?
It was like 4,500 to 5,000. Yeah.
That's a good amount.
Yeah. I mean, it was a lot, but I mean, yeah. So I was,
even on this deficit, you said you're on 400 grams of protein?
yeah. So 400 grams of protein. That's,
Bro,
that's 1,600 calories.
Damn.
Yeah. Yeah. So like it's 400 grams of protein, and then it's like 50 to 100 grams of fat, depending on the day. And then it's like 50 to 100 carbs, depending on the day. So yeah, that's kind of like a standard day for me now.
Gotcha.
But I mean, it's a deep deficit because like it's only been 10 weeks and I've gone from about 285 to 240.
Okay.
So it's been quite the drop.
Nicholas Perez asks, how many days a week do you train?
Typically it's like 5 days, but I kind of feel it out, you know? So like I'm basically doing push pull legs, and I'll just keep repeating push pull legs, and a rest day will come in when I feel it's necessary. And sometimes it's after 2 days of training, sometimes it's after 3 days of training.
Aj Abode asks, best way to keep the middle section in check while trying to push more calories?
Grow slow. Grow slow. Do vacuums. Work on that. I mean,
Do you find that like probiotics and digestive enzymes even help very much?
I think
for how many calories you're consuming?
I think when it comes to that kind of stuff, focus more on. I think fermented foods is a whole lot better than probiotic type of stuff for your gut microbiome. So things like sauerkraut, kimchi, pickles, fermented stuff like that is going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot.
Kimchi.
I
Kimchi
like
beans,
that.
baby.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So like that is going to be a hell of a lot better for your digestion than worrying about probiotics and like I don't use a greens drink or anything like that. But
did you notice your waist grow on GH at all?
Well, I mean, so like that's another reason why I wanted to kind of take a break, was to bring everything back in, bring my waist back in, because yeah, it was definitely thicker, but I was also 280 pounds. So it's like,
right.
There's a big difference between, you know, slamming 5,000 calories and being 285.
Did you ever do a circumference measurement?
Oh yeah.
What was the measurement before and after?
So like
GH
so like right now, my waist is like 36.
Okay.
But when I was 285, it was like 42.
42 on the 18 IUs of GH.
Yeah.
And that was how many weeks into using 18 IUs?
I didn't measure it until, you know, this year. So, but it probably wasn't much off from that. It's like, it's gonna, for me, I feel like the waist was just growing as I was getting bigger. So it was just kind of like, probably every 10 pounds was an inch, you know? So
right.
because when I started the growth hormone thing, I was 240. And I would guess my waist at that point was probably 34 or something like that. But then, yeah, by the time I got to 280, it was probably about 40 to 42.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
Rajan asks, Carditone makes me tired and stuffy. What other herbal blood pressure control do you find works?
Herbal blood pressure control. Like the Carditone stuff, I tried and I just felt that it was kind of a waste. When it comes to blood pressure control and pills, I think just go for the ARB. Like I wouldn't mess around with the herbal pills. And
for cholesterol, how much citrus bergamot do you take?
I don't take any.
You don't take
like
any
the Rosuvastatin and the ezetimibe kill it enough. So, I mean, there's not much point in getting it lower than a 30 or 40. You know,
that's pretty fascinating.
It's very low. Yeah, I mean,
what's your dosage of rosuvastatin?
So the rosuvastatin's 5
this
milligrams.
Is the 5 milligrams you already said, sorry.
It's okay.
And then ezetimib was
10 milligrams.
10 milligrams, the standard.
So, yeah, very, very low doses. Really nice. But it crushes it. And like my HDL's in the 20s and my LDL's 30 to 40. So it's like...
That's insane that your LDL was like that throughout all of this.
Throughout the whole thing, yeah.
That's crazy, man. That's lower than my LDL, and I'm definitely not taking anywhere close.
I mean...
and I'm on 10 milligrams of ezetimibe.
Real, yeah. I found ezetimibe by itself.
Rosuvastatin or anything, but
ezetimibe by itself, I didn't see a huge drop.
Okay,
so when I added the rosuvastatin, that did a ton.
Gotcha.
But again, like the potential side effects that we're not sure about, they're saying there's a correlation there. That scares me. So that's why I kind of want to switch to the Repatha.
Makes sense.
So we'll see.
Seth Green, the official Seth Green, asks, how did Shane Wallace change your views on high doses? This is the only educator in our space.
How did Shane Wallace change my views on high dosages? He definitely didn't. I mean, so he's talking about Victor Black. Victor thinks I'm crazy doing what I'm doing, but
we don't have to talk about Victor here.
That guy's Seth, the official Seth Green, is just joking.
Nestor asks, he mentioned that Telmisartan is outdated for bodybuilders. Can you ask why?
He says Telmisartan's outdated for bodybuilders.
I think he was saying that you mentioned that. Did you ever mention that in a podcast?
I don't remember. I wouldn't say it's outdated. I said it's weak. I said it is
on the weaker end.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'd say it's extremely weak, but bodybuilders should be being bodybuilders and doing their cardio and eating right and being hydrated, and we shouldn't need a whole lot of blood pressure modulation, you know? So Telmisartan should be all that we need. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think it's outdated.
Dave B asks, is Chase also using insulin right now? Anything pre or post workout?
Right now, no, but when I was using lots of growth hormone, there would be days where I'd use upwards of 20 IUs of Humalog pre-workout, but I was also doing 200 grams of carbs intra-workout. Yeah.
That is a lot of carbs intra-workout.
It's a big drink.
Was it simply through like cyclic dextrin or what other carb sources? Yeah.
Cyclic
bro, I fucking smashed cyclic dextrin during my bulk.
Yeah.
Dude, eating that many carbs, man, like it's
great.
Saved my life.
Yeah, so I my intro would be 200 grams of cyclic dextrin and like 14 grams of EAAs. And nice. So I would take 20 IUs of Humalog with that. And it's awesome. So, but not anymore. Not right now. Right now, none.
Maddie Gillis asks, how big were you when you were 21?
When I was 21, I was like 190, 180. Yeah.
And now you weigh what right now?
Right now I'm 240.
240, and this is after your cut. Or at least
this is deep into the cut. Yeah, I've only got like 3 weeks left cutting.
Okay. And you were 180, and then you went to 280, and then 240. Gotcha.
So when I started gear, I was 160.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I was 160.
Do you remember like around what body fat percentage, roughly?
So another part of why I got onto gear was I was like anorexic, not real anorexic. I was like, I guess it would be better to say I was like more like I had a serious binge eating disorder in that I was starving myself to get lean as a natty, to get like 155 to 160. I was very lean, which made me realize that I was kind of like pretty much damn near peak genetic potential as a natty. And that's when I realized, like, oh, if I want to be 200 pounds, 220 and lean, I got to use steroids. So that's what kind of drove me to be like, let's dive all in and go at this. So,
and how hard were you bulking, would you say, in those 7 years that you were bodybuilding naturally?
Well, so I wasn't. Yeah, no. When I was natural, like, I always just wanted to be lean.
Yeah.
I was always just trying to get abs.
That's the hard part, I think, is like.
And somehow I ended up being 160 pounds. And it was, I mean,
right.
Girls liked it. Yeah. It was great. Like, college was fun.
Gear is amazing, and obviously gear makes the biggest difference. But I think the biggest difference, if you just want to get huge, is like you just got to get a little fat.
Yeah,
you gotta just eat the calories, and people underplay the calories nowadays.
I've definitely spent way more time being fat than being lean, for sure. Definitely have spent way more time not being happy with how I look compared to dieting down and being like, all right, this is nice. Yeah.
I just want to say, like, I've taken gear for 3 years when I was being lean and I was in a maintenance to a calorie deficit. I stayed at 173 the entire time. Yeah. For the last year and approximately 3 months, that was the first time I bulked on a normal actual cycle with injectables. Yeah. It was 500 tests, 500 primo, or 550 tests, basically. Yeah. And then there was one point where I added a little bit of NPP. The calories were significantly higher than I've ever consumed in my life. So I was eating at the highest 3,800 calories. Basically, long story short, is 3 years with some gear and no surplus was no weight gain, 173.
Yeah.
Whereas the last year and 3 months, I have gained approximately, I'd say 11 to 12 pounds of lean muscle mass by eating 3,800 calories still on gear.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the calories make all the difference. Like, the gear are the workers, and they'll have more builders in your body. But if you want to build that building, you need the blocks.
Oh, yeah.
You fucking need it.
For sure. Yeah.
GM John Knight asks, why L-carnitine gives insomnia? My insomnia is gone after I stopped it.
I can say I did experience insomnia with injectable L-carnitine. He's probably bringing that up because that's one of my businesses. I do sell injectable L-carnitine. It's at chaseironsfitness.com.
I have a weird feeling that I bought your L-carnitine like 5 years ago or something.
I've been selling it for 3 years, I think.
Or 3 years?
Is as long as I've been selling it. But it's popular. Yeah. It's pretty popular. But so I have experienced insomnia from injectable L-carnitine, but I was using 3,500 milligrams of it a day.
Oh, that's a lot.
I was injecting a shitload of it. And it wasn't until I got to 3,500 a day where I was like, I remember I woke up at like 2 a.m. and I was like wide awake. I was like, let's fucking go. ready for the day.
Yeah.
And so that's when I was like, okay, 3,500 is too much. Nowadays I only use like 1 ml to half a ml a day of it. So, like 300 to 600 milligrams a day of it. And I don't have any problems with that. But I also didn't have any problems up to like 2,000 milligrams. So a lot of people that use my carnitine use between 1 and 2 milliliters a day of it and have no problems. So that's probably a pretty rare case that you get insomnia from it, depending on what his dose was.
Or maybe what time he was taking it.
Yeah.
Last 2 questions. Gordon asks, do you ever feel any abnormal heart rhythm or anything similar? Weird stuff.
No, I've never had any sort of like AFib, anything like that. Never had any odd heart things like that. Like, I can feel my heartbeat when I'm like laying flat. Like, I can see my pulse in like my stomach, but I have heard that that's normal. I've heard that that's a good thing. That means that your aorta is flexing and contracting and moving and being mobile, and being able to see like your pulse on different parts of your body is a good thing. That means your veins are contracting and expanding. So that's it. And I used to think that was weird, but turns out from what I've heard from other experts, like that's something that you kind of want to be able to see. That means your shit's moving properly.
Yeah.
So, but no, irregular heartbeats, no.
Cool. Final question. Jet Steel asks, does edging between sets really help with neural drive vectors? I need an answer.
Edging between sets. I wouldn't count on it. That's probably I would say you're going to be likely to get beat up if you're doing that in the gym. So, yeah.
Dope. I ask everyone one last question at the end of every podcast. If you were to die tomorrow and you had one message you could send to the entire world today, what would it be?
Jesus, if I died tomorrow, what did I die of?
Maybe I should phrase this as if today was your last day on Earth.
Okay, if today was my last day on Earth, that's better. Yeah, I mean, I would say stop wasting time. Like stop. If you have something that you want to do and is going to further your life and better your life, and you have a dream, like absolutely go after it immediately. Like one of the things for me, like I really wish I would have started YouTube so much sooner and put my time into that, because I wasted so much time personal training, 50 hours a week, being in front of somebody and making no money and living a shit life. It's man, life's too short to be doing something that you hate. Right. Not that I like hated it, but it was just like, I'm so glad that I got out of that.
I think that's an awesome answer. I love that answer, honestly. And I think my perspective is like, I'm sure that you learned a lot though in that process, even though you weren't pursuing your YouTube. But I do agree that if you have a passion and you have a dream, then you should take a step into it as soon as possible.
Oh yeah.
Even if it's just a side hustle or just like a little hobby. So obviously I grew a lot on social media in the time that I didn't bulk, but sometimes I'm like, I wish I spent those last 5 years since my pro card focusing on gaining size rather than just being shredded.
Yes.
But then again, I still gained in so many other areas of my life. So that's what I got to remind myself.
That's another thing. I wasted so much time just trying to be lean. Like instead of focusing on growing, I was just like, I just want a six pack.
But you got your wife, right? Or were you bulking?
I mean, well, that's
there doesn't never even matters.
Yeah, I mean,
All right. Anyways, thanks for coming on, bro. Where can everyone find you?
I mean, you search me on Instagram, YouTube, whatever, Chase Irons. It's my name. You Google that, everything will pop up. ChaseIronsFitness.com is my website. You can find me at Chase Irons anywhere.
Awesome. So. Thanks, guys, for watching. If you guys would like to subscribe to the podcast, or if you guys would like to support the podcast, you can do by rating us a 5-star on Apple's. Man, I am toasted. Rating us a 5-star on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you find your podcast, or subscribing to the YouTube channel and clicking the bell button, because that's what gets us awesome, sick guests like Chase today, who are super transparent, open, and do the sickest experiments. And I'm excited to hear about all of this and the 20,000 nanograms per deciliter test. Yeah. So I'll see you guys next time. Love you guys. Peace.
Peace.
Sick.